I'm not going to start with any easy questions.
What would you do if you couldn't fail?
I was vulnerable in the sense of I was just who I was.
The cold exposure conditions the inside of our body to literally adapt.
Whatever happens in the gut happens in the brain, and whatever happens in the brain happens in the gut.
Finding the grace and the humor.
Anti-aging is associated with at least an hour of deep sleep nightly.
Absolutely had mentors, absolutely 100% had coaches.
90+% of the decisions that we make today actually stem from fear.
Allow ourselves to have imperfection.
Nothing starts without a plan, nothing ever goes to plan.
Chaga is actually the most antioxidant rich food on the planet.
If we can bring a practice into our lives that helps us be more vulnerable. I'm so thrilled that this content is getting out there, that you guys are promoting bold and vulnerable message and aspirations for people, because I hope that we can all really live that every day.
Hey, this is Jessica.
And Svetlana, and you're listening to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast,
where we aim to inspire others to live authentically through sharing the bold and vulnerable stories of peak performers across a variety of industries. Hey guys, it's Jessica here, and you know I love my coffee. We have recently partnered with a company called La Repubblica Coffee. They are completely fair trade, they are non-GMO and all vegan, which you guys know I'm vegan, so I'm totally a fan. But the cool thing is that this is a mushroom coffee company. You know, sometimes people feel stuck in their coffee routine. They feel like they can't live with it, they can't live without it. Maybe coffee makes them feel overwhelmed. This coffee completely makes you feel so zen. It gives you a peace of mind and well-being and a clean energy jolt. You don't have any jitters that you get with coffee because the cordyceps really help to regulate the intake of caffeine from the coffee. It's a rich source of vitamin D, E, and many other things that help your immune function and optimal health. It's a perfect way to incorporate high beneficial superfoods into your morning routine. I love to start my morning with just a smooth cup.
This morning, I was so freaking excited because I ordered my bulk order. I'm telling you, George and I were literally waiting by the door yesterday. I'm not joking. And finally they came at like 7 and we were so excited, and George and I were like, should we drink this now?
Yeah, listeners, you guys are going to be so excited because you get 15% off all of your orders by using the code vulnerable, all caps 15. So vulnerable 15, all caps.
We only partner with companies that we believe in here at Bold and Vulnerable because we really value honesty and just being truthful to our audience. Being a working mom and entrepreneur, you really want to have all the hacks possible at your fingertips. So I'm so freaking excited to be partnering with this company.
Everyone that I've talked to who's tried it has been raving about how delicious it is. And we drink it during our podcast episodes, and just to give us a jolt of energy. It has 7 superfood mushrooms. So not only do you get the benefits and energy of your cordyceps, but you also get the healthy benefits of lion's mane. It gives you so much focus and immunity support. You also get this really nutrient-rich product that elevates your focus and also elevates your gut. So it's almost like using a smart blend of quality chaga, reishi, shiitake, turkey tail, and your immune system just gets this daily boost of energy. And it also helps to alkalize the effects of coffee's natural acidities.
Yeah, definitely. And what I really love about it is that they have a gold standard for their manufacturing, which I think is really important, which tells us that they have high standards, obviously, as do we here at Bold and Vulnerable. The benefits that you're receiving in 1 cup of coffee are just outstanding.
It's kind of like an anti-inflammatory for your body, which is absolutely amazing. And not only that, it has a wonderful taste. So I think that's everything that people are looking for. Even people that don't drink coffee, I think will probably enjoy the taste of La Repubblica coffee.
We have a discount code for you. It is all caps vulnerable 15.
Head over to larepublicasuperfoods.com and type in vulnerable 15. When you check out, you will receive a 15% discount on all of La Repubblica's mushroom coffee.
Get yourself an amazing adaptogenic cup of coffee.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast. And I'm super, super excited about today's episode because I have a really good friend here today. His name is Rob. He's really awesome. He is an empowerment coach for women. But I also want to say that he's more of he's a light in this world, and he shines a light of truth consciousness into everybody's field. Anybody that he meets, you feel this sense of, you feel a wake up coming and you feel the truth coming out, and you just know that there's something really different and unique about this person. So I want Rob to introduce himself and to tell you more about who he is. Because I just wanted to share who he is from my perspective and how I met him. And the way that I met him was he shook me up and he triggered me in the best way possible. And he's probably going to do this on this episode. And that's the whole point of this show, is bold and vulnerable honesty and raw and authentic conversations. So really excited to have you on today, Rob. Let's just start out by having you telling everybody a little bit about yourself.
Originally from Chicago, moved to Las Vegas about 10 years, and probably like most people, just living life that we were taught and conditioned to live. And probably it was around 2013 when I really started to see life with different eyes. And what does that mean? That means that everything that I was told of how life is supposed to be wasn't like that. And then that began what I call my awakening journey. And from there, going from a fitness coach to a health coach to a life coach to a business transformational coach and doing speaking engagements, it really just started, just expanding and evolving on its own to the part of where I'm now basically an empowerment coach for women, mainly women. And what that means is that I work with a lot of women to help them unmask their true identity and tap into their inner power and greatness, that has been downplayed, for so long by the stereotypical roles that society has says that women ought to play. And so what does that mean as well is that I help women unlearn a lot of self-limiting thoughts and behaviors, that no longer serve them. And during all of that, I help create new habits and a healthier mindset. Women learn how to let go of self-doubt, guilt, and eventually get to the point where they literally give zero fucks about the expectations and opinions of other people, which then allows them to become more, do more, and have more. And so I like to tell people, if you are truly ready to go to the next level of life, then we must create the next level version of yourself. So that's what I do. And so from that, women who go to the next level, create healthy relationships, there are more financial opportunities, that present themselves in their life. And then most of all, they create such an unshakable self-love. And that's what it's about. And that's what I do.
I really love that. And I love how you say you come from this perspective of be, do, have. And I love that, operating from that space of being that version of yourself and then doing from that version of you into having more, right? So I have a question. You said that you had your awakening in 2013. What shifted? What created that shift in awareness for you?
It was the funniest. I had signed up with a network marketing company, and I thought I was just going to go in there and sell and be a salesman for supplements, right? And when I got in there, I really truly started discovering that I needed to do a lot of personal development, right? And for personal development, it's all about what you now start feeding your mind. So I started listening to audiobooks and I started reading. I hadn't read a book I was 2013. I probably hadn't read a book since college, probably 15 years. I just skating through life. And when I started reading and started listening and hearing other people's perspectives about different things, it made me ask more questions. And when you start to ask more questions and you get more answers, it only makes you ask more questions. And then you realize when you start asking questions, people don't have the answer. Then you start thinking, well, wait a minute, there's more to this. And that's when my awakening began, because for so long we were kids till they got to a point where our parents or other adults said, I said so. What about this? Because, well, I said so. Stop asking so many questions. And we stopped asking questions. And the more questions you ask, for me, from my perspective, you start to become a little bit more awakened. And that's when it started.
I really resonate with the I said so statement. Because I was a kid that asked a lot of questions. I remember, in Russian, right? And I remember my parents saying in Russian, like, "Не почему." It's like a saying. It's sort of like basically like, I said so, shut up, like it's because I said so, and that's the way it is. So I love that we're all here kind of like challenging the status quo and like what we've been told, and that's the whole purpose of this show. So I want to get into how we met, because Jess, you mentioned you wanted to ask Rob, you wanted to get more into how Rob and I met and how he shook me up, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people could probably resonate with the story, and I haven't even heard the whole story, but I think a lot of people can resonate with somebody in their life who maybe they met and at first they were pretty shook by that person. So I kind of want to hear the story and get the full details.
Yeah, let's do it, because I feel like this is what I'm seeing Rob do a lot of on social media today. He's really challenging people with his questions, which is why this is so relevant. But yeah, we were at an event, and I approached Rob, and at the time I was not really grounded in my sense of self, and I wasn't really empowered in who I was, because I wasn't really sure who I was, because every belief and every thought and everything I had once known had just been challenged and basically broken apart. So I was kind of like, who the fuck am I? Like, who am I and what am I doing? I need to grab onto something that makes me feel that where I feel like I belong somewhere, right? So I kept going to these events, and I met Rob, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? And he's just like right off the bat, like, how many times have you gone? And I'm like, I've gone like 4 times or so. And he's like, well, basically like, what the hell are you looking for here that's outside of yourself? Like, straight up, just like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, what? And I got so triggered. I was like, I do not like this guy. Like, what an asshole. Like, who does he?
You know what? I think one of the biggest things that I think that you got really triggered, Jessica, she was like, so when we met, everyone is, taking the bathroom breaks and pass, like, man, this is so exciting. I'm pumped up. I'm ready to go. And like she said, I'm at, we're talking like, I'm like, this is my first time. Like, I've been here, and she says, what she said, like 3 or 4 times she's been to different events. And I'm like, so what is it that you do for a living? But she really didn't tell me what she was doing for a living. She was telling me what she wanted to do, right? So I'm like, wait a minute. You've been to multiple events and you're still planning on what to do? So I'm like, okay, so that means you're really just bullshitting yourself. So you're going through the motions and justifying what you're doing until you get the courage to actually pull the trigger, because you've been to this many events and you still haven't pulled the trigger. I'm like, oh, well, then you're just bullshitting yourself. And boy, that look she gave me, I don't know if you said something in Russian or something. I'm like, okay, all right, well, I guess I'll see you around then. And
I was triggered. I was upset because I felt really vulnerable, and at the same time, like, I was so triggered. I started coming up with stories in my head after that about like how, well, you know what, whatever. Like he's deflecting. But, you know, then it was about a year later when as I, you know, continued to grow and evolve, I started thinking back to that time and I was just like, you know what? Like I circled back and I'm like, everything he said was right. Like, I just wasn't ready for it then, you know, like I wasn't ready to hear that because it was just too much. But I ended up reaching out to him afterwards and was just like, yeah, you know, like you were right. Like I was really pissed off at you and annoyed with you, but you were right. I just wasn't ready for it. So, I mean, I feel like this is, I'm seeing a lot of this happen right now in the world, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, definitely. When you say happening right now, you mean a lot of people waking up?
Yeah, a lot of people are waking up.
Yeah, because things, from my perspective, things aren't making sense to a lot of people. And when things don't make sense, it creates confusion. Confusion creates chaos, and chaos creates fear. And for me, that's what, you know, I'm seeing from my eyes right now, is that so many things aren't making sense, and it's allowing people to now start asking questions. And one of the biggest things that I didn't even really understand till a few years ago is that, you know, truth is meant to be learned and not told. And so for me, it's like, don't take my word for it. Go research it, go search it, go seek it, and learn for yourself, because that's really what it boils down to, is that we've been passing on information. You know, we hear it and we pass it on, and then who really knows what the actual facts are and what the truth is? So go ask some questions.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is an interesting topic, right? Because Jess and I, we just recorded an episode on, you know, COVID and now everything going on with the protests and the injustices happening in the world and the rioting and the looting, everything, right? And you and I were just talking previously, like before this podcast, about, you know, I told you how I feel like a lot of people in the wellness industry, it's like they're living under a rock. It's almost like they just came out of, you know, their little bubble and they're in shock. Like they've just been shocked, like tasered.
Yeah. I mean, when you've been taught certain things for so long, and then all of a sudden you're starting to see that it's not actually what you thought it was going to be, then you actually start questioning who you are, because you've been passing on this information as well. And, you know, and that's where a lot of people are right now. And it's a lot for right now. I mean, it's a lot for people right now. It's just so much coming so fast, and no one really knows what to do and how to handle it and how to respond to it. And so it's just same thing I said earlier. It's more confusion and more chaos happening right now.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm following you on social media and I'm following a lot of what you say. And I feel like you and I agree on a lot of things, right? Because I question everything that's put out, you know, especially when it's by a big media source. I'm always like, where is this coming from? Who's really putting out this information? Is there another agenda? Like, you know, is this really going to benefit the people? Like, what is this really about? I'm always questioning everything. Like, I don't just take what people say at face value anymore. I mean, especially the media, right? So, like, how do you feel about it? I mean, you're pretty vocal about it on social media, and this is a really, like, we get really vulnerable and raw here and truthful. Let's talk about what's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that you've been posting about it and what you're saying. Like, we both know there are injustices happening. That's been going on, you know? Like, this isn't news. To me, it's like, this isn't news. This has been happening. But the reason why I say it seems like people are, like, coming out of, like, they've been living under a rock. It's like, where have you been? This has been going on for a long time. This has been going on all over the world, you know? This isn't just one event. This is on a continual basis, and who's benefiting from this, you know?
Right. And that's probably one of the biggest questions where you're going to get a lot of finger pointing of the people who are benefiting from all this. You know, one of the things that you talked about, or I even asked you, and I was telling you, I'm like, you know, every day, some black person, black man, woman, or child is probably, you know, unjustly, you know, being a target by someone, whether it's a police, a person, or whoever. In this particular case, we have a situation where this is not the first time. You have so many black people. I mean, I think it was like even a month ago, right? The Aubrey out of Georgia situation happened, but there was no uproar like it is right now. Yeah. And then we have this particular situation, and this is like a global wide, you know, like boom, urgency now. And for me, my first question was like, wait a minute. I mean, 93% of black homicides are by black people, black on black crime, which has been always going on. I mean, one of the reasons why I actually moved from Chicago to Las Vegas 10 years ago was because I was more afraid of my two boys being killed by someone of their own color than anyone else. So when this situation happened, and people ask me to, you know, where do I stand? I don't even know what that question means. Where do I stand with what? I stand against the actual officer who committed the crime, but I'm not standing against white people as a whole. White people as a whole didn't do this. So this big push, this big hype that we're in a race war with white people. What white people? Who exactly are we in a race war with? These 4 police officers, 1,000%. They are the ones who committed the crime, 1,000%. But for me to say that all police officers are like this, come on now. That would be no different than when people stereotype black people, that all black people are a certain way. Yeah. That's not making it any better. So as far as, you know, my perspective of this, you know,
are you getting a lot of pushback for making that kind of statement? Oh yeah,
1,000%. But for me, I tell people, in order for me, you want me to make a stance, that means I would have to take this personal. What I've learned in my whole awakening, is that I am responsible for me, that I am the creator of my own reality, that no one owes me shit. No one owes me fucking shit. I'm not holding or going up to every white person and say, hey man, you owe me something because of what your ancestor did 400 years ago. What the fuck is that shit? I gotta do what I gotta do right now. I have to make those choices. I have to do the work for me and my family right now. Yeah. I definitely want justice for the 4 officers who did what they did. But for me to go after all white people and turn against them, for what? No, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it just goes back to the big agenda behind this, you know, the real agenda, the divide, you know, like, I think I know we can all agree that what happened was wrong. And I know that Jess and I can both agree on the fact that, like, yeah, I can't say that I understand what it's like to be black or to be, you know, to have a darker skin tone and to have to worry about, you know, being pulled over or being, you know, or having somebody look at me and think that I'm going to rob them or whatever because of my skin color. Like, obviously I can't speak on that, you know, but one of the things that I've said, because I have these conversations a lot with my cousin, who's very, he stands for political and, any injustices, and he's all about like empowering women and empowering minority groups. And he used to tell me a lot of time that I'm privileged, right? He's like, you're privileged, you're privileged. And for a long time, I didn't understand that. I was kind of like, what are you talking about? I was really sort of living under my own rock, right? Like not really understand, like, what's the problem, And then it finally started to come down on me, and I'm like, holy shit, right? And I see it on this grand scale of like, yeah, I'm really seeing the injustices happen, and I can go like deep into like the Illuminati and all this shit, where I can go down the rabbit hole with this, right? But the one thing that I'll never do is I will never apologize for being white and privileged. And I will never apologize for being white and saying, I'm so sorry. I did, I'm so sorry. Like, here, let me make up for it. And let me basically prove to you that I'm not racist now, which basically feeds into this whole superior inferior complex. You're perpetuating the cycle over and over again. You're basically telling the black person or the colored person or the native person, like, you're basically telling this person, hey, you're below me. So sorry about that. Here, you're below me. I'm superior. And it's like, no, you're not below me, and I'm not above you. Like, let's cut the bullshit. And that's when I say, like, I feel like people are living under a rock. It's like you're continuing to like feed into this cycle.
Yeah, and and for me, I always come back with, when people ask me, my thoughts about it, my perspective about it. At the end of the day, I'm like, you want me to give you an answer about a problem, and all we keep doing is giving the problem more energy, more attention, more life, and yet no one is really talking about solutions. Now, working through, the system to change different techniques in the police department, cool. But again, that's a solution. But we're talking about, that's a tree branch. Police brutality, that's a tree branch, connected to a tree, to an oak tree. We got to get to the root of different things. And that takes a collective effort to be able to say, okay, what's the root of all of this? And then what are some solutions? How do we all work together to be able to move forward? Yeah. Versus pointing the fingers at one another. You did this, you owe me this, y'all did this, y'all did that. Man, pretty soon it's like, man, it's a whole bunch of talking and no action.
Yeah, you're basically like, I had to take a break from social media because I'm like, I feel like I'm I'm being dragged into this vortex of like insanity of just nonstop, like, you're wrong, I'm right. If you don't speak, you're this. And it's just like, what is this black and white, way of thinking, right versus wrong. It's very like, you're either this or that, black and white thinking, right? And I'm just like, what is this? It's not growth minded. We're not, like what you said, you're not reaching, we're not actually coming to a solution. You're feeding more into the whole duality of this. Like, you think that you are a part of the solution, but you're actually just creating more of a divisiveness between all of us, when really it's like we need to come together collectively as one, as humanity, like for humanity.
Well, and the only way we're going to collectively come together is when everybody takes responsibility and ownership for themselves and their actions. Bottom line. Yeah. You have to do you. You have to take ownership for you. You're responsible for you. And when everyone is being mindful of what they're doing, then collectively we can come together. But when everybody is telling other people what they should do, ought to do, have to do, how are we going to ever come together? Because what works for you may not work for me. So me telling you what you ought to do or what you should do how's that even a solution? For me personally, stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Do the work, go inside, do what you know. What are your values? What's your foundation that you're living life of?
Yeah.
And you got to do the work.
Absolutely.
But it's like when we first met, that me asking you, then why are you here? You had to go within and figure that part out.
Yeah.
But for me to be able to come to you and say, hey, you don't need this. You've done this enough. You could do that. That's me basically telling you how you should live and walk your path and do your journey. The only thing I'm going to do is ask some questions. Then you have to go within. You will have to make the decision of what's best for you. And then most of all, you got to do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think too, I've been doing a lot of research on after our talks, Svetlana, because we were talking just last week about how the education system has really failed us in America specifically, and I'm sure in other countries as well, by creating its own narrative of history and then teaching that to the public. And on top of that, I've been doing a lot of research on just what Jane Elliott preaches. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with her experiment, when it was a psychological experiment specifically to focus on racial discrimination. And she is an educator. She divided her class by eye color. And so the people with blue eyes and brown eyes were separated. And then essentially, on her first day of experiment, she told all the blue-eyed children that they were smarter, they were nicer, they were better than all of the people with brown eyes. And so throughout the day, she would praise them. She allowed them privileges. I mean, these were young kids. They were allowed to take long recess, be first in line for things. And she started to do the opposite with any of the children who had brown eyes. She made them wear collars on their necks. She got in trouble for this, by the way, but it was an experiment that she did, and she was very much criticized and ridiculed. But on the second day, she reversed everyone's roles and made the blue-eyed children feel inferior, and the brown-eyed children were designated the dominant group. And so the exercise essentially just taught that on both of the days that the children were said to be inferior, they took on that role. They took on the look, the behavior. They did poorly on tests, their performance, and the quote-unquote superior student on whatever day they were quote-unquote superior was the opposite. And they became this superior group, and they did better on the tests and all these different things. And so this is an experiment on eye color. And I found that so interesting, but I also love that Jane Elliott preaches that we are all we came from one common ancestor. We all have the same great, however many greats grandmother, and she was black. And we are all a product of the same human race. And so I think injustice of the way that we are educated in this country and in other countries, I'm sure, but I can't speak to it, is that we don't get all the facts. We're getting fed this narrative that is feeding a different agenda, whether that's religious or political, or whatever agenda is being fulfilled at the time, and we're not getting the proper information. But like Rob, you said, we have to do the work. We have to go and question and continue to question and continue to say why and how and what. And we have to do that work on our own. We can't just believe everything that we hear.
Man, I totally agree, because, and I I said earlier about how like police brutality is a tree branch. From the time we are born into this world, choices are made for us. Our names are chosen for us. Our education is chosen for us. Our religion is chosen for us. Everything from the time we are born. And so then you put us, kids, into this educational system. It is designed and programmed to literally put us through the motions. Literally, to put us through the motions. This is what we said. Take our word for it. Take our word for it. And then next thing you know, as we're growing and evolving, we're basically saying this is what we know to be the truth because someone told this to us. You know, one of the things for me that, you know, for my awakening to be where it is right now and it's still evolving and I'm still waking up. And I remember, you know, how you mentioned Jane Elliott. One of the things she said when she was doing that experiment, she said, a quote, "If it can be learned, it can be unlearned." Right? And that was for me, it's like literally having to unlearn so many things that I was taught from the time I was a child. So many things that I still am unlearning as a man right now from what I was taught as a child. Because as you see, whether it's racism, prejudice, being prejudiced, that is a learned behavior. It's learned. It's taught. We don't come into this world hating anyone, but we're taught that. And so that same conditioning, that same programming comes through the educational system that gets us to this point right here where we're waiting for someone to tell us what to do. We've been programmed, we've been conditioned. And so for me, one of the things that I think, and I agree with you, our educational system needs to be developed all over again, right? No one is teaching credit and business and all those different things, right? Come on now. So I'm with you on that. And we have just gotten to a point where we have just been programmed to think a certain way. And that's what we know. Now people are starting to wake up and ask questions.
Yeah. There's this quote that I really love. I believe it's by Aristotle. It's, "Give me a child until he's 7 and I will show you a man."
Well, that's
literally what you just touched on. We're programmed from the day that we're in our mother's womb up until we're about 7-10 years old. And basically life is just designed and decided for us.
Yeah. And then we live this life, this journey with go to school, go to high school, go to prom, go to college, get a degree, work for someone, get married, have kids, have a dog, and we work so that one day, after about 30 or 40 years of working, then we can enjoy it. Okay. Yeah, that's not happening no more.
we're woken up to that.
Right. But that's what we've been told.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's our segue into talking more about what you do for women and segueing into the business aspects of how we can break away from these patterns and these learned behaviors, whether that's in life or business. I mean, I know you mentioned a few things that you don't learn in school, and one of those things is business and finances and how to live your dream life, how to live a life that you're designing and get out of that system that's really just kind of pushing you into roles that are preconceived and fabricated to fit the current society. So how do you go about your process of helping women? And let's really get into you and the core of what you do and why you love what you do.
So this right here is how we ended up finding what my niche was, because, you know, my perspective is that we are all living in this system that was created by men, right? The system was created by men. And for so long, men have had the power and control over everything. Most of your billionaires are men, right? And so for so long, women have been downplayed, you know, of their greatness by being put into stereotypical roles. Mother, wife, stay-at-home mom, right? Do this, do that. And there needs to be a balance. Like, I mean, women are the core, for me, are the backbone. I mean, hands alone, women can give birth. So that puts women right at the top. And for me, it's like there needs to be a balance, like with the men at the top, so that we can have those multiple perspectives of how things, can be delivered. And so for me, to be able to truly share my gift is like, okay, like when I met you, it was like, okay, what are you doing? What are you waiting on? You have a gift. You have a superpower. What are you waiting on? Go tap into it. Let's go do it. Go share this gift because it's needed, right? The world needs it. This next generation needs it more than ever because we as men were taught to be unemotional, right? Everything's black and white. Just go, go, go. And, and chase after money. That's what we were taught. But at the same time, everything that we as men do, we have a prime motivator. We can say it's money, but technically, women are men's motivation. Men aren't working out to look good for another man, right? Men aren't making all this money to impress another man. It's usually for a woman. And then, how many successful men out there do not have a strong woman by their side? So there's a lot of power and greatness and value in women, right? And in order for that balance to come together, for men to truly understand the power and the value of a woman, then women must first know and acknowledge the power and the value of themselves. And when that happens, you talking about women being empowered, where it's balanced at the top, where we can create a system that everyone can live in and thrive in, you'll see it then. So for me, I truly feel that, our future and our generations are in the hands of women. The more women that rise up and become stronger together, watch how this world changes.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this study, but I attended a seminar, I want to say it was 3 years ago now, it's quite some time ago, at MIT, and they were discussing diversity in leadership and how most companies are run by men. And most companies, in terms of their leadership team in general, their C-suite teams, are mainly men, and they're mainly non-diverse teams. So white males are running a lot of the top companies that we see successful in the world, in business, in the stock market. All of these companies are run by men. And the study that they did at MIT was that over a long period of time, so not a short period of time, but over a long period of time, the one thing that would help a company survive long term in terms of innovation and adaptability was to diversify their leadership team. And that meant from a gender standpoint and from a cultural standpoint, because those companies that were able to adapt and change and evolve with our culture to say, hey, I'm going to diversify my leadership team and bring in different genders, different races, different cultural views, different perspectives, those companies went farther and over a longer period of time. So you're really onto something so special, and I think it's so needed in the business world, and I just appreciate everything that you're doing.
Yeah, and for me, that's what I've seen for so long. I mean, I've seen it from how the system can use women, whether it's from the videos that you see them in and everything else that goes with how women are looked at, and now how the platform of social media, dictates how you want to see women, bathing suits and different things like that. And it's like there's so much more power in every woman. Great. You want to show off what you work for? Cool. But I can tell you right now that there's so much more in you that this world needs. right? And so when I come into anyone's life, but especially women, I see it because for so long, I've seen so many women who've played the role of, whether it's, like I said, being a stay-at-home mom, housewife, and you have so many women out there in the corporate world working their asses off, to show, to be accepted and to be acknowledged that they're worthy and they're valued, and yet women still keep getting pushed down, right? And so what's the solution for that? The solution for that is that when a woman really accepts and owns her power and knows that a man is motivated by it, and tells me, well, you won't, let's just keep it real. When a man is courting a woman, he wants sex from her, right? She holds the power. She decides when he can have it, right? And a lot of times, once she gives it up, whether what the timing of it is, once she gives it up, she has lost her power, right? The power. Women have that power. And so when women can truly step deeper into their greatness and start really saying, hey, I know that you cannot do this without us. And as each woman stands in her own, more women have the permission to stand in their own, then women unite even stronger. Men have to listen. We have to listen. I mean, every major company that I've ever experienced, I couldn't go straight to the president of the company, which was 9 out of 10 times a man, right? His assistant had more information than he did as the president. Every time. She was the powerful piece. I was teaching my boys chess. We haven't played chess in a long time. And so we were going over the pieces in the chessboard. And so we talked about the pawns and different things like that. And I said, we know what the concept of this game is. And so he said, and I asked him what was the most powerful piece on the board. And he said, the king, which is so crazy because that subliminally planting the seed of the male being dominant, right? And so I said, let's go over all the pieces on the board. The pawns can only move 1 space at a time, or 2 from the initial point of move. Then you have the bishops that can move diagonally. Then you have a rook that moves horizontal and vertical, right? And you have the knight that moves like in the L shape. And so I said to my boys, here's the king. What can the king do? The king can only move 1 space at a time. 1 space at a time, right? The most powerful piece on that chessboard is the queen. That queen destroys everything in any direction that it wants to go in. Horizontal, diagonally, 1 space, 10 spaces. That queen is the most powerful piece on that board. So why isn't that same powerful piece on that board represented in this world right now? Why is the king, who can only move 1 space at a time, shown as the most powerful piece versus that woman who protects it?
I love that analogy.
So for me, why do I choose to empower women? Because from my perspective, they're the most powerful piece, most powerful human being in this world.
Yeah, it's interesting. In chess, it's one of my favorite games. It's usually the queen protecting the king.
Right. Right. And no one wants to lose their queen.
Yeah, that's usually the most important piece that you're always you're willing to lose almost all your pieces, but you really want to keep the queen, because without the queen it's tough to win the game. You can, but it's always easier with the queen. I had a question. So when you said, this kind of goes back a little bit, you said you were talking about sex, and I think that that's a powerful one, with the power with men and women, and you said that the woman really holds the power, and once she once she has sex with a man, she loses her power. What did you mean by that? I just wanted to clarify for the audience that they don't see it. I want to make sure that they understand your perspective on that.
So in this world, we as men have been taught to be emotionally detached. And the more emotional detached we are, the further we can climb up the success ladder. Women are very emotional beings. And when the man and the woman, from my perspective, come together and this man is wanting to date a woman, he wants something. Men want sex. We want sex. And so the man is doing everything that he feels that he has to do to get what he wants. Right? Now, I'm not saying all men are like this. I'm just saying this just is the way it is. This was me. To say and do whatever I had to do to get sex. That's what I wanted. And so we will chase and do whatever we have to do to get that. So the woman holds that power. But then once the woman gives, allows herself for the man to be with her, gives up the sex, then the power is now in the man, because the woman who has an emotional attachment to her body, who knows the value, gives it to the man, he may not see that same value. So now the woman is more emotionally attached because she gave herself to this man. And when you are emotional, that means you are now vulnerable. When you are vulnerable, you now are open to someone that can literally, without even knowing, take your power from you and use it against you. There's an emotional attachment from the woman versus the emotional detachment from the man. Why can men just go and have sex with anyone and not have any emotional attachment? Because it is what it is. But there are a lot of women, from my perspective and my experience, that there's an emotional attachment. When it even comes full circle around, when it comes to business, in order to truly be successful, there cannot be an emotional attachment, because emotions can never truly make a decision per se without there having to be some consequences from it. So again, to answer your question, what do I mean by that? That when the woman has the power, I say make sure it's on your terms. You choose to give this up, then make sure you're not doing and giving it up to a man so that it gives you value, that you get acceptance or approval from that man. You want to have sex with him, then do it because that's what you want. So whatever happens after that point, well, good. That was your choice. You made it. But to do it from the perspective of being accepted, being approved, feeling like you're good enough or whatever, is a setup. It's a setup. When you have the power, then make sure that whatever choice you made or make is because that's what you wanted to do for what was going to make you feel good, and not so that you can be accepted by someone else.
Jess and I have both taken Alison Armstrong's courses. Have you heard of her?
Yes.
We keep bringing her up in every podcast, Jess. Do you notice that? We're always talking about her.
Teaching. I love her. She's so great. Worthy of being brought up. Yeah.
They're so relevant. And I'm still learning, but it's like that immature phase that I think it's the princess. Do you know the term for it, Jess? When you're not a queen when you're operating from that standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the understanding men, it's called a prince or a knight, and then from the women's standpoint, yeah, you want to get to be that queen. But there's, it's not just learning about women in her course too; it's learning about men too. So just how we act differently and how we think and what motivates us is so wildly different. And so we just have to be aware of it. And I think, Rob, what you were saying is more of the awareness. Are you doing something because you need validation from somebody else? That doesn't even need to just be sex. That could be anything. Are you posting that picture on Instagram, whatever it is? Are you posting that quote even because you want somebody else to validate you? Or is that what you really feel inside? Is that your true heart, or are you just doing something for somebody else?
Yeah. Right. 1,000%. And it has to be to that point of whatever you do, you did it for you. Yeah. Bottom line. One of the I think it's got to be my top book is The 4 Agreements. I love The 4 Agreements because it's like the basic foundation, the principles of life. Like, have an impeccable word, do your best, never assume. But the biggest one, don't take anything personally. Don't take anything personally at all. And that's the one thing that in my awakening has been so valuable to me, is that I've learned that when you give someone the power, like you said, the validation, when you give people the power to build you up, you also give them the power to let you down. Right? So for me, this whole thing is, I can't take any of this personal, no matter what the circumstances or the situations is. I can't take it personal. It is what it is, and from then, you now own your own power. You have this sense of self-awareness and this stronger mindset that I will do things based off of what makes me feel good, regardless of how it makes you feel. I am not responsible for your emotions. Yeah.
I'm just reflecting on everything we've been talking about. Everything goes really deep. There's a couple more questions I want to ask you. Well, since we're on the topic of books, what are your top books?
4 Agreements. Which one? Letting Go and Surrender by Dr. Hawkins. David R. Hawkins is a good book. I love that one. It's, for me, there's so many great books, but for me, The 4 Agreements is one of the best ones ever. And it's just a matter of it's so crazy because most of all your books say the same things just from a different perspective. Mm-hmm. I just love reading now more than ever because I get to just really hear and be able to visualize how people see life through their eyes, but there are just so many, from Eckhart Tolle to Dr. Joe Dispenza to Maxwell Maltz to Robert Greene, The 48 Laws of Power. There are just so many. I mean, you can go all the way down to the easiest read of all, which is a great one from Joshua Medcalf, Chop Wood, Carry Water. Those books are great. I think the one I'm reading right now is White Fragility, which is an awesome book, especially from what's going on right now.
One of the questions that we always ask people on the show is, what's one of your most, bold and vulnerable moments?
One of my most bold and vulnerable moments.
There could be many, but one that comes to top of mind.
2. I think it was about, our eldest is 13. And so this was probably when he was 11. So this was probably 2 years ago. And I grew up, in a culture where spanking your kids as a form of, discipline was what it was. That's what you did to get your kids to act right. And I remember one day, and I don't even know what happened or how it even popped into my head. And my son, he did something. And it was the look in his eyes. And I remember telling him, from this day forward, I would never put my hands on you. And what happened was it was like a course of just seconds just flying past. And I had to ask myself the question, like, why would I even whooping him? Like, what made me whoop him? Because my parents did it to me. And I don't fault my parents. They did what was taught to them. And so for me, remember I told you in the very beginning of this conversation that, when you start asking questions, you go deeper to finding the root of it.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was like, why am I even whooping him? Where is this even coming from? Why did my parents whoop me? And why did my parents' whoop them? And then it hit me. It was like, whooping came from the slavery days.
Yep.
When, the slave masters wanted to keep their slaves in check and in fear of not doing anything wrong. So you whooped them, right? To keep that fear in them of not doing anything wrong. And I told my son out that moment when it all hit me, I was like, I will never put my hands on you to make you do anything. I would never do that. You can never disappoint me. You will never lose my trust. I will love you unconditionally. But at the same time, I want you to know this. Whatever choice you make, you will have to own the consequences for it. But I will never put my hands on you to make you be afraid of me ever, to not do something out of fear. Never. And that was probably the most vulnerable day of my life, because I can't remember the last time I cried so hard and when I hugged him. Because for me, we were always taught to raise our boys with a certain type of toughness, right? And I was like, it's over. Yeah. We're breaking these chains right now. I would never put my hands on you. So that's probably one of the most vulnerable times in my life. That was a couple of years ago, but there's a lot.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that share. So appreciate that. I felt that in my heart. I really, really felt that. That was deep. That was kind of, it goes hand in hand with, one of the questions the other questions that I wanted to ask, which is, again, like I said, goes hand in hand, but the unlearning of what we learned, right? And would you say that that's part of it?
1,000%.
Yeah.
We've learned so much, and now you have to unlearn. How do you unlearn things? By learning new ways. You have to learn new ways of getting different results than the ways that we were taught. So for me, I tell people, it's like, to be awake is to know, right? To be awake is to know. Because once you know, you can't unknow it, right? You can't unknow it now. So you know it. So now that you're awake, now you got to stay woke. Now you have to stay woke. And so what does that mean? That means of all the different things that we have gone through and all the different things that we have been taught, programmed, and you got to unlearn those things. And it's hard. It is hard because, as you already know, the majority of people have a certain way of how they do life. And here you are doing the opposite.
In that moment, I know this is like going into it again, but did you realize it in that very moment? Like, oh my God, I'm never doing this again. Was it kind of like a slap in the face awakening?
It was one of those, fuck, man, like, shit. I was like, I didn't notice. I wish I did. It was literally like that. I was like, fuck, man. I was like, man. I'm like, this is some powerful, deep stuff right here.
Yeah.
Right? And it was just like, it just all came because it was just like, and it was so crazy because my ex-wife had said, even several years prior that, hey, I know you with the boys to teach them a lesson, but you're going to have them growing up afraid of you more than anything else. They will be afraid to talk to you. They will be afraid to make a mistake around you because in fear of they will get a whooping, because that is what they're going to associate with when they make a mistake, that they're going to get beat. And all of those things just came to me just all together. And it was just like, man, thinking about this, imagining from the slavery days of those same things. That was the reason why it was done. And I'm like, no, that's it. enough is enough. We are breaking these chains right here, you know. And so I think from that moment on, I've never loved and shown my boys so much affection than I've ever had. Daily, moments to moments.
Yeah, I mean, we're just doing our best, right? I feel you on the parenting part, because I have a daughter now, and when my partner and I fight, I'm like, oh my God, like, I can't believe I just yelled in front of her. Like, I don't, the last thing, like, it's like, so your kids are like your mirrors,
Yeah, it's like you're going to be their front line role models, right? Yeah. Kids, they may not do what you tell them to do, but they would definitely imitate what they see you do,
Kind of reflecting on, Rob, what you just said about, giving your kids love, and have you seen a shift in them since you've changed your.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. My youngest son, who's 11, he is so crazy because he's probably learned what not to do because what he saw his brother always doing to get in trouble. And he's been on like the A honor roll. He's like the student athlete. And then my son, RL, who is 13 going on 14, he's had some challenges, some emotional challenges, controlling his emotions and different things like that. And remember, this conversation happened a couple of years ago. So I can't even imagine going from 13, a couple of years ago, to 11, all the different probably emotional traumas in his head related or associated to whenever he's got in trouble. And that still kind of carried on. Even when that conversation happened, it's not like everything gets wiped out. There's a lot of healing that has to be done. Mm-hmm. And for me, there's that saying that, life is how, not how you see this, but how you are. And for me, this 2020 has probably been one of the greatest years ever for me, regardless of everything that's happening. Because when this quarantine happened, we had to spend so much time together. And my son, RL, who was kind of like just skating through school, was very checked out, didn't like school at all, was getting the lowest of the grades, but just barely enough to make it to the next level. This quarantine changed our relationship, changed how we connected and bonded even more. And he ended up being like on the AB honor. He had like a 3.5 average this year, as he graduates 8th grade. So for me, it's coming full circle around. And our relationship is even better than ever because now we've had more conversations, more defining moments, and he is, I tell him, I'm not raising you all to be great kids. I'm raising you all to be great adults. And so from that, this whole period, this experience has brought us together even tighter than ever.
I feel like we could just continue talking to you for hours and hours, and I just appreciate you being vulnerable and getting so deep with us about all of these topics. I want to end on kind of a lighter note and just kind of follow up with you on it doesn't have to be your morning routine, but any type of, if you have a great morning routine, please share. We're always open, but your morning routine or any type of hacks that you have in terms of getting through your day, anything that you could share with the listeners that might be beneficial or that people might be able to take on in their own lives?
Well, for me, the very first thing I do every day, no matter what the weather is that when I wake up, this is just my routine. I go get a hot glass of, or warm glass of water and put some honey and lemon, and I go outside and I drink it and I just stand out there. Not for long, a couple of minutes. And then come back in, meditate, and then I find a way to do some type of physical activity. Whether it's me going to some type of class or working out or doing spin, like you see some of my videos, is always doing something, because to stimulate the body and get it going, for me, just helps everything starts to work. And so from that point on, those are the three things I do to jumpstart my day. Go outside, take that initial inhale, exhale, come back in, meditate, and get to going and get moving.
Yeah, I mean, we've just seen so many successful people come on our show, and successful in many different ways in different industries across so many varieties of business functions, coaches, people in finance, whatever industry. There's typically a commonality between everyone that they take the time and do some meditation. So I love that you have that in your practice, and just a kind of another message to all of the listeners out there that is a hack that can get you through your day, thick or thin, and however you're feeling, get moving. So where can people find you? Let's shout out all of your social media, where you're most active, website. Where can people follow you and find your programs for women?
So right now, we have a Facebook group community being started right now called The Next Level with Rob Chandler. Then people can also go to nextlevel.com, and that's NEXTLEVL.com. So there's not an E in the last part of it. So nextlevel.com, and then on Instagram, you can find me at black_Rob and the number 4.
Awesome. I'll link all of that in the show notes for everyone who wants to learn a little bit more about Rob, and I'm definitely going to be following your journey on social media, and I just look forward to staying in touch with you. It was really nice to meet with you today and just get to know you on a deeper level.
Well, thank you all for having me on. This was great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
So let's go out there. What you all are doing right now, representing women. This is great. Your voice is strong. Your voice is powerful. Let it be heard, and just keep putting it out there. And for those that is too loud for, that's not on you. It's on them. But what you all are doing right now is so great, and it goes in alignment to what I've been saying, that you all have the most powerful voice. Make people listen to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Woo!
Let's go.
Let's go. Thank you for listening to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast. For more information on today's speaker, please visit us at boldandvulnerablepodcast.com.
And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Let's keep spreading the love by being bold and vulnerable. Thank you. We love you.